The Ghana Mine Workers Union of the Trade Union Congress is threatening to embark on a nationwide sit-down strike if the government does not, as soon as possible, institute measures to protect the lives of its members while on duty. The union made this known at its National Executive Council meeting held at New Ibrim in the Eastern region. The following report has more.
Something goes, something comes. We are here. Something goes, something comes.
The Ghana Mine Workers Union has expressed worry over the neglect, inaction, and the seeming powerlessness of the state's governing structures and regulators in the mining industry. Speaking at the union's National Executive Council meeting, General Secretary Abdul Momin Bana charged government to implement what he describes as complementary security services to protect members.
The complementary security services would give us a higher tier of security support, at least to the security services that are offered by these mining companies, who largely operate unarmed. We expect that our social partners, the Ghana Chamber of Mines, must equally be wary of what is going on. And so we will withdraw our services if we witness any further incidences that threaten the life or the lives of our people. We would. And it is not going to be about withdrawal of just one constituency or the other. It is going to be about the withdrawal of services across the mining industry. Choboy! Choboy!
Meanwhile, National Chairman of the Ghana Mine Workers Union, Mensa Jakari, has expressed displeasure about some chiefs in mining communities acting as recruitment agents to help people get jobs in the industry.
They have made themselves recruitment agents because you have to stamp by his office before you are employed. What is happening that they take people's money who are not from the community, get them employed, then the town people will start revolting, talking, and complaining. Go back and look at the records of all those people that they have employed. Most of them were endorsed by the company. They were endorsed by the company. So if we allow the companies on their own to do the right thing, that one they operate their mining companies. No mining company will take any bribe, will take any money from you as a worker. If you qualify, they will look for the right people to employ.
The Ghana Mine Workers Union National Executive Meeting also afforded the members the opportunity to discuss development within the mining sector in relation to new forms of employment module being forced down the throat of Ghanaian miners. The meeting also deliberated on how to strategically position the investment wings of the GMWU to sustain the business and offer enhanced returns to members.
Well, thankfully, we are joined via Zoom for more by General Secretary of the Union, Abdul Momin Agbana. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. First off, what are the insecurities your members are facing within the industry for which you are threatening an industrial action?
Yeah, apologies for that. Good evening to your viewers across the country. I think that the insecurities in the mining industry abound. Our members increasingly have come under a lot of torture from criminal elements. We do not know where they are coming from, but largely we believe that government's efforts are stamping out galamsey from the system because of the consequences it has on our environment, on our water bodies, have largely driven a lot of illegal miners from along the river bodies or the water bodies onto legally acquired concessions. And so mine workers work on a daily basis. They come into contact with strangers working on the legally acquired mining concessions. They do not know what their identities are. And oftentimes they have been put in harm's way, largely because of the porous nature of the borders around these concessions. And so clearly, a lot of miners have been attacked. Some have, unfortunately, we have recorded quite a number of fatalities. We've recorded quite a number of injuries. People have lost eyes. People have lost limbs. I mean, the list is countless. And so we believe that one too many incidences of this nature require that policymakers and particularly government, who has the obligation and for that matter the authority under the law to ensure that every citizen of this country is well protected. Whether you are at home or engaged in an economic activity or venture, it is a duty of government to ensure that all its citizens are well protected. Beyond that, in the employment relationship, we also believe that the employer is bound under the law to ensure that the employees that work on its premises are properly, protected. And for that matter, given all these things that are going on in the mining industry, where members come into contact with strangers, on these mining concessions and putting their lives at risk, it's high time that government pays heed to our call and ensures that the right resources and logistics are deployed so that we can curb this menace once and for all.
Quite an unfortunate situation there for mine workers. But the chairman also accused some chiefs in the mining communities of interfering in recruitment into mining jobs. Can you shed more light on this?
Well, some of these mining companies have what they refer to as recruitment or employment models that they are running. And so they want to give, as part of their corporate social responsibility, some opportunity to mining communities, and for that matter, inhabitants of mining communities, to be part of the employment opportunities that are available in these mining companies. And so they, rather than do that by themselves, would use chiefs or use the traditional leaders as a conduit for these recruitments. And so we have information where, people sometimes would have to, struggle and just to get their way through when it comes to employment. The concern that we are drawing government, and for that matter, the relevant state agencies too, is the growing, penchant by indigenous mining communities to arrogate to themselves or appropriate to themselves opportunities by way of employment that comes up in these catchment areas. And what we are saying is that it doesn't really matter where you find a resource. Every Ghanaian who lives in this country or even outside of this country has an opportunity to work like any other person. There are affirmative action arrangements or affirmative action policy arrangements that have been rolled out by some of these mining companies, well intended. But the unfortunate part of it is that we are gradually seeing some kind of fierce contestation, sometimes leading to, some attacks on people who may not have or who may not hail from these mining communities. And for that matter, getting a job sometimes becomes extremely very difficult for, people who do not hail from these communities. So what we are saying here is that everybody should be given equal and a fair opportunity to land a job once the opportunity presents itself. But to the extent that that becomes the sole preserve of a community within which you have a mine in itself, is creating some level of alienation and also creating some disaffection amongst the very citizens of this country. How traditional leaders recruit, yes, they go through these traditional councils. They are required to process, sometimes get the endorsement of the traditional leader and eventually get a recommendation for a job. And this is part of the reason why you have sporadic, upheavals, coming up every now and then. We witnessed one recently in the Guinea. We also witnessed in Sanso, where the community itself got agitated because there were some employment opportunities coming up that they felt that they needed to have the first right of refusal. We're not entirely against, giving some fair opportunity to community members or, inhabitants of mining communities to get opportunity to work. But what we are saying is that the extent to which it then becomes, we do not want this situation of some xenophobic attacks here and there where because you do not hail from this community or that community, you cannot have an opportunity to work. That in itself presents a major, security concern. And so it's important that we find strategic ways or interventions to ensure that we curb this before it explodes.
Okay, so let's talk about the issue of contract mining. It's persistent. What is the way forward? Because employers seem to have found respite in such contracts.
Yes, the issue of contract mining, I mean, it's obviously a model that seeks to, profiteer at the expense of the ordinary worker. I mean, we all know that if you have a mine with a life of mine in excess of 10, 15, 20 years, why would you ordinarily want to, put workers on contracts of a short-term duration? All we're saying here is that the decent work agenda requires that workers should be given an opportunity to work in employment that guarantees them some level of longevity, that they are able to plan their lives. Income security must be a critical ingredient of the kind of job that you do. Access to social protection, in this case, pension, access to Medicare and all that are key ingredients that feed into a decent work or a decent job. Beyond that, your right to freedom of association, your right to collective bargaining, these are fundamental principles and rights at work, and which are supposed to be embodiments of a decent, sustainable job. Unfortunately, with the advent of contract employment in the mining industry, most of these decent work pillars have been thrown to the dogs. And so employees virtually work under a lot of fear and a lot of insecurity because of most of these exposures that I have highlighted. And so as a union, what we are saying is that we have come a long way. Most of the gains that we have made over the years through hard work, through a lot of hard bargaining and toil, unfortunately are gradually being eroded because of these employment arrangements that appear not to even find expression in our laws. Because for employers to simplistically reduce this whole notion of increasing non-standard forms of employment in the industry to the fact that our laws permit it, in my view, are quite simplistic, and these are things that we should never allow to happen in this country. And so it is obvious that our labor laws, our current labor law needs immediate review. We have identified very critical provisions in the law that appears to be encouraging and giving them the opportunity to do some of the things that they're doing. One clear case is Section 66 of the Labor Act that actually provides an exemption where an employer, depending on the decision to employ a worker on a contract of a specified duration or a specified work, that the employer could exempt itself, or the law exempts that employer from paying redundancy pay. And so most employers, out of their penchant to exploit, will rather go under Section 66, hence rendering members, and for that matter, Ghanaian workers, in very precarious work arrangements. And that is a clear situation where you have workers being put on contracts of a fixed duration. Beyond that, we also have private employment agencies, which are springing up like mushrooms virtually everywhere. Unfortunately, these private employment agencies are fronted and in fact sponsored by politicians. Most of these private employment agencies are owned by politicians. The law provides for the setting up of public employment agencies, which are supposed to be sponsored by the state and for that matter by government. Unfortunately, rather than creating these employment centers and facilitating employment opportunities, politicians have hijacked this whole private employment agency intervention, which unfortunately is a creation of law, and using that as an opportunity also to profiteer. And so these agreements increasingly are promoting, disguised employment. And you see a clear situation where a worker works all right, he works for one employer, he takes his pay from another employer. In the unlikely event where the employee, finds himself, whether he injures on the job or for any reason he falls sick on the job, the employee do not actually know which employer to turn to. He doesn't know whether to turn to employer A or to turn to employer B.
Right.
For the reason that he's in a disguised employment. And all these private employment agencies are the creation of disguised employment. And we believe that.
Thank you so much. Abdul Mumin Bana is the General Secretary of the Ghana Mines Workers Union. Now,